Hello everybody, and welcome to the second in our series on how much did this website cost. Today we'll be looking at the Getty Residences by Peter Marino, which is a fancy real estate website for a new development in New York. We found the website on awards, www.ards.com, and the reason why we chose it is so many of our branding agency clients, creative agency clients work in the property and real estate market, and they tend to have similar features, one of which is not huge amounts of information, but the brand is really important, and how that brand is expressed is really important. So animations is a big feature of this one. We touch on templating and the number of templates and how you can save money through being a bit more by rationalizing and simplifying the number of modules, or word beginning with C that escapes me, whatever. Yeah, so what we'll do, we'll go through this and see what happens. Cool, so what we'll start with here is reusable components, or templating. One of the things with this website, as we're scrolling through it, is beautiful as it is, and it really is nice. I recommend, adding it on is a reason why I think it won a site of the day, if not definitely an honorable mention on awards. But you see here, this is the homepage, and we click through to residences, and understandably, again, it's different. This section, what we're seeing here, if you can see the spinning mouse, isn't repeated on, say, Works or Press. Residences is its own template. Works, when I click on it eventually, is its own template. Quite different in its structure, not necessarily in its style. You can see this as the same website as the homepage, for instance, but these are not modules that can be taken or recreated from the homepage. They've been designed, each template has been very much designed in isolation of it, in and of itself, not really thinking in the sense of a design system. And I think that's the key phrase here, design system. We've had a project recently it was a large industrial end client, and the agency we're working with had a budget in mind, didn't necessarily engage with us too well during the process, and came to us with one budget that we'd kind of loosely agreed 3 months earlier, and then we're like, pow, here's 15 templates. The initial site, I think, had 6. And we're like, well, there's a problem here, because this is 3 times the website. It's not the same scope, even though they're similar. Each one is still standalone. We're going to, it's not like we can just copy and paste from component to component. And there was a problem, and the way we got around it was through working with the agency to approach the website through the lens of a modular design system. So rather than think in terms of, cool, here's my homepage template, here's my about template, here's my contact template, here's my blog template versus my case study template versus my project template. And you can do some really exciting things when you start to imagine how a website can work as a system instead of a list of templates. Just want to caveat, I think they made the right decision here by keeping this quite templated for this Getty website, because there's not masses of information and you want to make it visually interesting. But if this was a development company, say, and this was one project out of, say, 10, plus about the team, contact, investors, then that's a larger build, and you really got to start thinking at that stage, moving away from templates and moving towards a design system. And by that I mean a modular system whereby you might, as an agency, show your end client the homepage, the about page, the team page, But to us, for developers, we might just see a mega list of 20 modules, and that's great. And what would have been, to go back to the last example, what would have been an 8-9K build dropped down to 4. And we were very happy with that. We were like, that's a good number for I think it was like 10 modules with a couple of different slight changes depending on the module. And and we didn't feel like we were doing it under duress or making less money than we should be. It felt like a very fair amount for the work we were having to do. And those 10 modules could then go and build a 20, 30, 40, 50 page website. What thinking in terms of a modular build gives you is also flexibility when it comes to client requests. One of our earliest modular projects using Gutenberg in WordPress was for the end client was a very large, again, industrial fashion, sort of like back-end fashion industrial company. I'm working with an agency in London, and as is always the way, the end client came to the agency very late in the build process and say, "Oh my word, we've forgotten jobs. How do we put jobs on the website?" Word came to us as the builders, and agency was like, "There's no budget. We need to add this functionality in, but the client has no more budget." They were prepared to pay us out of their share of the budget. We said, "Well, send us the designs, and we'll have a look and let you know what we think." Understandably, as the designers, as the agency didn't have any budget, they had just cobbled this new section, this new page together from pre-existing design components. And we were like, "Oh, right, that's amazing." So essentially, it's that module, that module, that module, that module. Boom, done. Took us 5 minutes to make a new custom post type for job, and then it just used the same modules all throughout the site. And that's where it gets really exciting, because websites should be living creations. They should grow and adapt, and it's one way to look through that challenge around the job through the lens of project scoping, scope creep. The other lens, and I think the more correct lens, is it's just the website naturally grows and develops, and its purpose changes over time. And the longer the website you've invested money into can last, because you can reuse modules elsewhere, or when you need to add some functionality, it doesn't cost the earth because it's only an extra half day to tweak or add a new module. That's better. That's got to be better for both the end client, but better for the agency. So this is a lovely example of one where I understand why they didn't go for that more modular approach, or that more design system led approach. It's very templated, but it's a great example of one where the templating is still correct. And again, I know I am repeating myself now, it's important to make the right decision for the right client. I should imagine this website doesn't require an awful lot of updating, and that's another key factor here. If a website is fairly single purpose, the content once developed is kind of the content, real estate being a great example, then templating makes sense. You're investing so much time and effort and training into trying to remember how to use a modular system, which can be more confusing. And if people are just going to be like changing a couple of dates here and there, or adding a new gallery under here, I suppose, but to have to do that, they'd have to make some new culture, dining and lifestyle as well. But when it's fairly fixed, it makes total sense to approach it in a more templated way. But the downside of that, and ultimately what the whole point of this conversation part was, it's expensive. That's the key consideration. It costs more money to do loads of individual templates. Even on a standard templated website, you'll notice in the quotes we give, normally the homepage, which we always then include the header and footer, off-screen menu, off-screen search, funkier stuff like that. Anything like that, the homepage is always like 1 to 1.5 to 3 days of dev, because that sets the tone. That sets the style of the CSS or SAS in this case. You know, it sets so much of the rest of the build. So it means by the time we're probably approaching contact or legal, we're talking about less than half a day at most for those templates, because guess what? So much has been done before. So many components have been done earlier that we can then reuse and tweak slightly. So even on templated builds, we would expect there to be a coherence, and that coherence tends to lend towards decreasing cost per template over time. That will not be the case on this one. You can see things sliding up there. One of the things that we regularly get asked about is background video, and I see why. It's, you know, especially in this case, it's a really well done one. It really gives off. It fits the style. Clearly, Peter Marino is a interesting man with a very interesting fashion style, and that style is obviously deeply ingrained into the whole build, into the whole development. And rather than try to do too much here, you know, what they've gone for is we're going to have a nice repeated short background video and the key pull quote overlaid on top of it. It's really nice. Some of the challenges with background video. Sometimes clients don't quite understand that it's not background if it's playable and it has sound. If the idea is that this is a video to actually be watched, that someone should sit down, stand up, lay down, whatever, and watch it, then it shouldn't be background. It should be foreground, and especially if you want sound, it has to have a play button and not be autoplay. One of the challenges with video in general is we keep getting requests from some agencies asking us to have autoplay with sound, and it's like, it's just not possible. I think technically it is possible, but Google bans it. You know, if you go into the console, and it's just full of errors if you try and do it, because no one likes it. It's a terrible experience. And what I've noticed is that even there's been some amazing web experiences I've encountered recently of websites that have used visuals, used video, used audio to immerse you in something. It prepares you and says, you're about to undergo a video and audio experience, and with that in mind, off we go. And that's fine. Google is fully prepared to allow you, or Chrome, fully prepared to allow you to do that. It doesn't say, when you land on a site, here's some booming sound, here's some background music or some ambient sounds. It's like, it's not the 90s anymore. We don't need it. It's just not good. Also, there was something else when it comes to accessibility with background sound that boggled my mind. Oh, well, shoot. This may have to be corrected in due course, but one of the key things with audio playing audio is that people who use screen readers have to listen to what's being read out to them from the screen, and if your sound overrides that, they're going to really struggle. And what gets worse is sometimes your client might say, oh, well, we'll make it super visible and super accessible for a user to turn off the sound. Like, great. Doesn't work for someone with a screen reader because they can't hear the button that turns the sound off because of the sound. So again, don't do it. There's no way to do autoplay with sound, and you shouldn't even be trying, ultimately. More on background video. It's one of the key things here is the size of the video. Videos are big and heavy, especially when you get one of this size, which is, fairly high definition and high resolution maybe. It's only when we did some research, it's about 16 seconds long, and that's your sweet spot. Ideally lower, of course, to us, for these background videos that are designed to provide some visual interest. And that's the key thing. Background video should be used to give visual interest. That's all. It shouldn't be part of the experience or part of the brand. It should just be like, cool, as you're navigating down the page, a light bit of movement is there. And where it's also really valuable is GIFs versus MP4s, that whole debate. There gets a point where to get a GIF to a certain length of video and a certain quality, high definition, high resolution, it starts to get as a bigger file size than an MP4 doing the same job. So oftentimes it's quite nice to use MP4s for even some light animation work. If something's just going to be animating off to a corner, it can be really good. With the downfall, which is being put on the spot here, my understanding is that currently MP4s cannot have transparent backgrounds, so they're not so great for like overlaid animations. But let's say you did have a image that had some animation, why not turn that into an MP4 rather than be a big GIF or investing loads of money into HTML, CSS animations. Right, animations. That's chapter 3 in this going to be quite a long video, I fear. Animations. Animations are challenging. We love them. You'll notice on our website. Ooh, what's gone wrong here? That's not so good. Talking of animations, obviously spooked it. The thing of animations is we love using them. They really provide lots of great visual interest, but the challenge kicks in around costs and around ensuring that you don't try to do too much for the budget. Now, it's a big point and something that actually I intend to do a separate video on, because I understand not everyone's super savvy, or when we speak about libraries, what does that mean to a lot of people? So we'll do a separate video on that in more detail. But for the sake of today, when it comes to animations, one of the key considerations is if we can grab a pre-existing library. So there's so many wonderful parallax libraries, lazy loading libraries, even things that follow your mouse around, or make things move a certain way, load in a certain way, page transition. So when you go from page to page, you get a nice overlay, for instance. And so much of that can be done through pre-existing libraries. The open source work of people far smarter than I, who have made these libraries that then the rest of us can use. So if we are using something that's been pre-developed into a good, robust, solid library, it's fairly affordable to add in. It really isn't going to cost the earth. And you can get some really amazing stuff, really give incredible sense and feel to a website for very little additional money. However, if there aren't one of these pre-existing libraries, if we are facing having to code something up from scratch, some bespoke animation, that's when the costs can get really high really quickly, and we try to push clients away from that. It's one of the reasons why we do the free UX and UI support. We want to have those, we want to be part of those early conversations to try to not just veer you away as an agency from ideas and inspirations that are going to be challenging for the budget that's been agreed, but also to provide opportunity to say, right, well, cool, see what you're doing there. I notice you've loved that site and that site. We've done this bit of work, that bit of work, and we've seen this thing. Why don't we implement that, and that will give you that same playful, luxury, high-end, cheap feel that you're going for. And we just wish more agencies would ask us to do that, because it just saves so much pain and disappointment, especially when, as still happens too often, we're brought in very late in the process. Not just the web design, but the animations are being signed off by the end client. And suddenly it's a challenge. It's an account challenge to reach back to the client and say, actually, now we've looked at it, we can't do that, or this is going to be too expensive, we're going to need more budget, which is just a rubbish experience for everyone involved. So again, top rules here: look for libraries, look for, we're going for inspiration, try and find different animation libraries, or if you know it's going to be an animation library, let us know, because it means that you can basically say within reason it's guaranteed to be doable and to be doable at a lower cost most of the time. When these things start to interface with each other, or if you have a lot of animations going on at one time, then you might have concerns and issues. But otherwise, it'll be, if it's an off-the-shelf library, it's going to be easy to implement. And point 2 on this: involve us as early as possible, please, I beseech thee. Just, we can provide so much value and we don't charge for it. We love to get involved as early as possible, and we can just avoid some of these painful moments, and crucially help you wow clients. And that's what it comes down to. You want to be seen as doing work which pushes boundaries, which makes especially your more creative clients feel like they're getting something really creative, and we want to be part of those conversations. So yeah, please reach out, ask us for advice early on. It'd be really good. Next up, we're going to talk about site speed. This, as you can probably say as you scroll through, could be, for such a minimal site, still quite heavy. There's lots of imagery, lots of, fancy. There's video as well, and especially when you go into residences, you can see there's lots going on there. And a key thing, touching back on animations, these are things, these are still more files potentially that have to be loaded in and then managed. So how does this site seem to load so quickly? One of the ways in this case is that it's actually built on Gatsby. Here we go. I think you see the mouth here. Now, Gatsby.js is a static site builder, and I won't go into all the technical details about that here, because I love it, I'm interested in it, because I'm a mega nerd, but for most agency clients, they don't need to worry about this. What I would say essentially is it converts, I'll rephrase that. WordPress, for instance, when you land on a standard WordPress site and you go to the home page, what's actually happening, unless it's super cached, in which case that's fine. Most times when you land on a home page, the website, the PHP which powers the theme, and then the template, so normally front page.php for the home page, will start to basically run back to the database, to and fro, grabbing, okay, I need this logo, I need that text, I need to get that image URL, and then that image to get that. And that takes time. That's a lot of requests, especially if you've got not so great Wi-Fi. That really can build up, and that's how you get websites that take multiple seconds to load. This one doesn't have that. And the thing with this is that it's Gatsby, and what Gatsby does is create a static version of the site. What does that mean? Essentially, it means that there's no database, or rather what you interact with. When I'm on the GettyResidences.com, I'm not interacting with a website that has a database. I'm interacting only with the site files, with the front end files. So the pure technically HTML, CSS and JavaScript, with all of the images, videos and text and such like already on the page. So there's no need for it to go and call from the database. The text is already on the page, it's in the HTML, so it's super quick. What's interesting about that is that even to our more, shall we say, artistic agency clients, even they are now starting to notice that their clients are increasingly SEO responsive and SEO understanding and demanding, and also SEO and also aware of the impact of site speed. Beyond it being a user experience thing, it also has a huge impact on your SEO. So we're facing an interesting time where end clients are requesting more And although sites are, so Gatsby and other React-based, JavaScript-based development is becoming cheaper, it's still not cheap, especially if you're trying to get a really good experienced developer. We are finding that speed is becoming a recurring feature. And again, another reason to involve us nice and early, because as an example, we don't at the moment build with speed first in mind. We build for design accuracy. We want to achieve pixel perfection, because normally and until now that's been the primary driver. You've gone through a brand identity with the client, you've designed a website. It might have been a very painful process, and it's important, vital even, that what is designed, what is built, should I say, fits for design perfectly. That does lead to some challenges, to some optimizations that lean towards design over speed. And we're finding to try to balance that need for design quality and maintaining super speed, we're having to move beyond just off-the-shelf WordPress to consider these Gatsby approaches, or simple React on the front end approaches. WordPress is fine for that. It's maybe not the best. You can really go down a bit of a run on different CMSs for these kind of static site or Jamstack approaches. Contentful was one that we've seen. Looks cool. I've tinkered with it myself as with my own developer head on. WordPress works with it. It has its own REST API, which is essentially the content that you would see on the front page.php. That content is made available through data points, so your JavaScript site living off here can come back and grab that data, either in a kind of static way for Gatsby, or from as and when it requires it, from a kind of more React way, a more dynamic way. Yeah, it's interesting. Honestly, we haven't done much work in Gatsby. We're trying to build it out as an expertise, because it's clearly the next step in where we're going as an agency, and it's clearly where a lot more of our clients want to go, because that's where their end clients are pushing them. And it's one thing that's really exciting about it is that, I think the WordPress is one of the key considerations here. People feel comfortable with WordPress as the CMS. So if we can maintain that CMS, but say, right, but here's going to be, actually, you're not going to be like using a theme here. We're going to be using this front end powered thing. It gives you the best of both worlds. It's a CMS more and more people are comfortable with, but you still get that incredible speed and incredible responsiveness, even though you have a dozen videos and a dozen images on your website. One of the things that I want to try and do with this series, and with all the content that we produce in months ahead, hopefully, is to try to give a sense of how we see development and how we approach certain design challenges and how we turn them into code. And hopefully, if people watch this and they get some value out of it, it will help them working with us and maybe other developers. It gives you that helps you speak their language and helps you to understand where and why some development decisions are being made. So this might be utterly boring to some of you, but it equally might be of some interest. So we're going to start here with press. So here we are on press, and we see here all these lovely examples of press that have been given. And you notice, if you look here, you can see just underneath my face, maybe, that this click on this link will take you through to El Decor, Wallpaper, New York Times, How to Spend It, X, Y, and Z. And what I'm raising this for is that this is one of those pages where we would probably ask quite a weird question. Maybe not, but we'd probably try to involve our design agency client here to kind of say, right, looking at this, this is repeated content, and I think that's one of the key things in development. And again, as you does touch upon a much wider battle we have sometimes with designers. Is too often, I fear, designers see websites through the lens of a magazine or even a poster, where this is your homepage. This is we've received this content, we have done these designs, and that is that. And that's just not what a website is. And especially if we go back to our initial sort of part of this video where we were discussing design systems and modular builds, your design has to work when there is 10 bits of content as opposed to 5. When there is, when someone who maybe isn't as enamored with design comes along and tries to add some content, how do we make sure that this still works really nicely? As an example, let's take this. Are these images created with that nice overlay, or is the overlay in CSS so that it covers for the maybe less design oriented of the end, people at the end client, as an example? Ensuring that websites can grow and change, even within designs, is a key question. And we do have regular arguments with clients sometimes about that, about how is something meant to work. There's a great example here. We go to residences, where we see here, so like, let's say that they might want the ability to add future residences. Let's say this was a much larger development which was going to come on stream over the next 5 years, and they would need the ability to add new residences when Tower 3 was, went live in 2024. We'd have to kind of look at this and go, right, let's break this down. Okay, so residence number 5 is like image, you've got image, centered text, floor plan, some kind of quote, and then an image there. Number 6 is still central text, but images on the right, and we've got a quote off to the left. 7, different again. 8, different again. Penthouse, very nice, different again. This is perhaps a better example than the one I was going to go for later on, so I'm going to focus on this. Let's say this was a brief. Imagine these weren't that this isn't a real estate site. Imagine that this is actually a CPG, consumer facing company, and these were products, and they knew that every year for the next 2 years, 3 years, they're going to be releasing a brand new product on this page, and they want to make sure that they can truly express the uniqueness of each product whilst keeping within coherent brand. So here we go. Here we have 5 different ways of approaching that. So instead of a residence, imagine this is a product. The client wants the ability to add to add a 6th product or a 7th product. The question then is, well, how do we do that? Is it that every 5th one shares this design? So is it numbered? Is it like the first one has this design, second one has this design, third one has this design? Is it a row? Is this a repeater field? One of the things that I'll probably talk about, you'll hear me talking about a lot over time, is Advanced Custom Fields Pro, which is basically one of the most vital plugins for WordPress, as it gives you so much customization options and makes it so easy. But they have a thing in there called a repeater field, which is for repeated content of the same type. So, repeated product in this case, or repeated residence in this case. And is there like a button you can select? So when you add each new row, does it have this visual style or that visual style, this visual style? So that was a bit of a divergence, but I'm just trying to get a point across here of the need to be mindful of repeated content and not to design in too much of a rigid, structured approach, in the sense of this is the final version of the website. As it happens, I think this probably is the final version of this website, but it's because of that, it's a great illustration of how the majority of websites shouldn't be like that. I would say we see lots of these kind of websites that aren't designed to be the final version. Agencies, designers approach websites too often through the lens of finality. This is a design that I've done. It's there. It's like, there's your logo, there's your social media icons, there's your brand guideline, there's your business card, and here's your website. And it's like those 6 things come together, and it's like, it's just not. No. That's not a package. It can be a package, but you need to approach the website differently. The website changes. Your business card probably doesn't change for the time you have that brand, which one hopes the brand lasts 3 to 5 years, if not longer. The website will change massively. The website, I would argue, should even be independent from the brand, in the sense of, and then change the brand. It's more a case of, your brand is an identity, it's colours, it's fonts, it's a way you approach white space, it's a way you approach colour. And well, the website might want to change every couple of years, and actually you can do a whole new web design based off the existing brand and existing identity. It's not a package, it's a very different entity. It needs to be approached very different entity. And now I'm being repetitive, this repeated element system, the fact that your design has to be able to grow, is super important, and that kind of separates the websites that last from the ones where a year on you're starting to get negative feedback from clients because they're like, oh, it just doesn't do what we need it to do. Or another thing about it is, sometimes to make things editable, because we always want to make as much of the site editable as possible, it gets really fiddly and it's not super obvious that what you're changing at point A on the back end lines up with point A on the website. And we always sort of say, it's one thing, we always provide training, we always work with our clients to manage sites, but a year on, for the end client, a senior person is going to say, right, we need to add this onto the website, and the job will end up on the desk of the lowliest intern, and they're going to have to try to understand the website and understand where to add stuff. And when you have these kind of like really elaborate, mostly abstract designs, it can get quite hard to understand what you're changing and what can you change and what you can change it to as well. So back to this example. This is probably a much cleaner example. We wouldn't have, if we were building this site, we wouldn't approach this as a custom post type, because that would be overkill. There's no single press. It's not like that these link through to a template or page on the website where you could perhaps see an iframe of the article or some information about the article. Understandably, that's not what they've invested in, so we wouldn't be looking to do a custom post type here. We'd probably be looking to do a repeater field using advanced custom fields on a press template with the option, one of two options. And here's the thing, where these questions start to compound and start to grow. The way we'd approach this is, does the uppermost, the top or the first repeater row always go into this larger style, into this larger area, or is it actually this is a featured or selected? Do they choose what goes here, and instead of having it appear in the row below? Yeah, these are the things. There's so many questions we have to ask about this stuff when we're trying to think about how a client's going to use this and how the website is going to grow with its owners. Okay, and to finish off, I'm going to tell you what I think the website would have cost to build. I was actually quite surprised when I did the number crunching, and I was expecting it to be less because it's not a very big site, but it goes back to those original points where each page is its own template and they're all very different. There's no saving of money. Press, for example, Works is as much work probably more, I think, actually, than the homepage. Normally, we would expect once the homepage is done, the second template is done, the third and fourth start to, the cost for them start to fall quite radically because you've done most of it. Normally, by those first two templates, you've seen most of what you're going to see, and then it's just repetitions on a theme. Not in this case. They're all very, very standalone. And again, I'll explain why that makes sense in this unique case. However, it does have a cost factor. There are a large number of animations. None of them crazy, and that was a key thing we discussed earlier. Like this kind of coming in left and right, sort of slight parallax, movement up and down, fading in. Individually, all very simple animations, but making sure it all works together, making sure the timing is correct, and that's a key thing. Animation timing is up there with font spacing for annoying challenges, but when done right, makes such a difference. So yeah, we'd want to make sure we had enough extra budget there to take the time to invest in that, to actually get the timing right, make sure that these things didn't fire at the wrong times. We'd probably also one of the things here we'd also be considering, I didn't touch upon it in this video particularly, but the blog post explains it a bit better, is with these large images, with this video, and uniquely on this case, we would definitely consider looking at a CDN or a content delivery network. In a very quick way, essentially all content delivery network is a server that is optimized for the delivery of imagery, videos, files, basically, as opposed to a more generalized server where a website is stored, for instance. What that might be is that it might be mirrored around the world. So when your investor in Singapore is looking to buy some New York property, when they go on this website, the main website might be hosted in America, near New York, but crucially the images, which are the slowest things to load, they're probably being mirrored by a server in Singapore. So when they land on the website, it should load really quickly. It should feel like, because essentially the images and the videos are coming very, very local to them, and that makes a big difference to it. So yeah, they're fairly easy to implement. We use one called Cloudinary an awful lot, which is quite nice, and it just changes. If you've used WordPress before, it changes how you approach images and files. Normally with custom fields on WordPress, you'd expect to upload the image or upload the file. The major change in this case is that what would be previously a file upload area becomes a URL add to field, where essentially you've gone to your CDN situation, whether it's like AWS S3 or Cloudinary or one of another options. You've uploaded your files there, and then it will give you a little URL for that file, and that's what you put into WordPress to call that through. Very easy to implement, but it's on the quote, so I want to raise it. And we always add a line item for legal and 404. Does this have one? Here we go. Here's your extremely boring legal template. And whilst we're here, let's see, is there F404? Not really. No, not very nice. It gets forgotten so often, to the point that's why we add it as a line item in the quote, because if people are paying for it, they tend to remember to design it, and it hasn't always got to be fancy. It's a great place to be playful, and even on a site that's quite serious, you can normally be a bit interesting and fun there, but it can be as simple as just having 404 or what you're looking for isn't here, please go back to the home page. But as we always would like to put it in there. So the total cost that we would have charged for this was £4,097.50, or £4,917 with the VAT included. And like I said, that's high for a site of this scope typically, but I'm comfortable with it. I think it makes sense considering all the things we discussed earlier. It's also one of those sites where I might shoot myself in the foot here, where it's a nice build, it's a nice project, it's been nicely designed, and we're always up for negotiations when it's a nice project for a nice client doing something really interesting. We appreciate budgets aren't always the best, aren't always where you want them to be, so yeah, always bring us your creative, interesting, fun work that maybe hasn't got the biggest budgets, because we'll negotiate. We're often happy to take a hit on our margin to do really interesting work. And this, as an example, as indeed I found it through, this is a great award. This is definitely an award-winning piece. This is the sort of website you can build your portfolio off, build your name off. So especially if you're trying to do something really creative, really interesting, bring it along to us. We'd be really up for working on it. Right, I'm going to end there. Hopefully that was interesting and not a total waste of anyone's time. Any questions, comments, let me know. Always happy to give someone indicative quotes. We always say it to potential new clients if they're looking to change web development partner or grow your stable of partners. Send me an email with or post in the comments below with some of the with like either some designs you've done, or even like a live website of a project you've done recently, and I'll be able to give you and a fully indicative quote. So not arranged, just I'll approach it through the lens of, right, let's give you, okay, this would be the cost of that, that'd be the cost of that. You'd see the full line item like you can see in the attached blog post. So yeah, if ever of any interest, let me know. And hope you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you all soon.